Volume all right?
What?
My volume all right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
So we're live. This is SeerNova podcast live. So we're going to go around the room or the virtual room or whatever, and people are going to introduce themselves. I have Hector here, El Loco. He's just here. He doesn't have a campaign or anything going on. He's just...
I got nothing.
So first we're going to go with Ben, and then Enrique, and then is it Duran or...
Duran, but close. I accept any of it.
All right, so Ben first.
All right. My name's Ben. I'm from Sydney, Australia. We've got a graphic novel running on Kickstarter now called Any Port in Storm. Basically, it's set after teleportation has been invented and then criminalized. And a girl has to try and save her hometown, which is built in the most inaccessible place on Earth, basically only reachable by teleportation. So now that you can't get there, the government's shutting it down, and she has to try and find a way to save her home.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Enrique.
All right. My name is Enrique Quique Lopez. I'm a writer, inker, artist, which currently we're producing a Kickstarter campaign called Not So Fair Tales. Fractured fairy tales brought for the modern times. We take fairy tales and give them our own twist. 172 pages out of a hardcover. It's available. We're almost at the funding point. We're only $600 away. So hopefully some of you out there will give it a look. There's a 40-page preview available also when you go to the Kickstarter. You can check out some of the great stories in there. We have a bunch of different, we have 19 different creative teams, 35 different creators involved. So hopefully you all check it out.
Sweet. And I guess Jeff.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. I'm Jeff, a comic writer out of Scotland. Have a series called The Spirit of Inky, which is crowdfunding issue 3. I'm also a podcaster for a beer and comics podcast called The Brewgooders, hence my strange at next to my name. But yeah, nice. Thanks for having me on. Nice to see everyone.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Duran, and then
Hello. Yeah, hello, everybody. So obviously, I'm Doran Corkum from Whitefire Comics. I usually have a lot of things going on in different storylines and that, but right now I'm focusing on the Forsaken Future issue number 3 that's on Kickstarter. It's a dark future series. Starts off a little the typical asteroid kind of hitting Earth thing, but it's not about that part of the story. It's about the future afterwards and the effects of it as technology kind of evolves. What has happened is North America way of life has just absolutely been obliterated, and the survivors are moving along, and then a new city pops up called New Washington, and it's about that mining town that is mining the resources, and then mutation starts to happen, and the reaction of society to that.
That's cool.
Interesting.
I saw the cover. That looks awesome.
Yeah, I was very, very lucky. I got Ariel Mandel, who worked for Marvel before, and Ulysses, I'm going to say his last name wrong, Areola, who's worked for DC, Valiant, currently Marvel. He's a talented colorist. He did a great job on the coloring.
Yeah, I've actually heard of him.
So yeah. So Ben, you just launched your Kickstarter Friday.
Yeah.
How many have you done?
I've done one before. It went well. It was good. We had problems with the printer. The printer went bankrupt during the fulfillment stage, which was fun. But we ended up getting all the books and getting everything out, so it came all right in the end, but it was very stressful. This one's looking to be a lot better.
Was there any obstacles besides the printer issue during the Kickstarter?
No, we had everything. Everything went really well. Book turned out great, and yeah, this one's turning out really well. So my book's actually finished, except for the coloring. It's all been penciled and inked and lettered and everything. So the Kickstarter is basically to pay the colorist and the printing.
That's cool. I feel like I do that process differently than like other people because I know like I think Hector he usually letters before getting it colored, I think, and I don't have that. Yeah,
Wow.
it's different. Yeah, I usually get it colored and then I get it lettered. But
Well, I like to at least sketch out where dialogue should be, like in the roughs and stuff like that. But I don't really like it. Can go really anywhere in the process. I
Yeah.
think, if you account for your dialogue in the roughs.
yeah,
Definitely.
I've been outsourcing color. I've been outsourcing lettering for the previous 2 issues of my series. I'm doing my own letter in this issue to kind of keep costs down. But I've have found that I used to color as well as letter, and I find lettering instead of coloring to be more. It's almost more logical because it affects, like you were saying, a local about like bubble placement and stuff like that. You know, there might be there might be the whole thing about like I think part of me doesn't want to spend ages coloring something that I'm then going to obscure with a bubble later on. So like actually it makes more sense to do it this way around.
Yeah, I think for the inker too, it's kind of like the same thing. It's like if I spend hours, detailing this one little part in the background, and then there's going to be a bubble going right over it. It's kind of like I kind of wasted my time, doing that detail. Unless you get it like animated or a motion comic or something where the viewer will actually see that part, and then the text bubble will come in, later or something like that. But in traditional comic.
I'll tell you one thing though. When you're talking about, you just mentioned the inker because that's where most of my artwork goes through. I once tried to pass that off, like doing exactly what you're saying, because there's going to be a word bubble here, and Mustafa Musa, who does a lot of professional comics for Marvel and stuff, he really went into me. He said, "Look, even though you may think there's something going to be there, it is your job to do it all." It's unfortunately the thing is that even if it gets covered, hey, it got covered. You just never know, because let's say somebody changes the script at the last minute and it's not done, then what are we going to do? Then you left it there without being, because the idea is that I get a script, even though I might not be the main artist, and then I can kind of see, all right, where everything is going, because I may not want to put a major highlight where I know something is going to be covered anyway, because then it might distract the bubble or something behind it. Yeah. But the other time is like, I have to assume it's going to show up at some time. And at the same time, if I'm going to be able to try to sell my original art, I don't want to have something like unfinished. Then I go like, well, look at that. What happened there?
Yeah, it's more of the design aspect of it. Like, when you're designing the panels, do I want to put the placement of different objects and things like that? Do I want to put something that's hyper detailed here when I know there might be a text bubble there, kind of thing? It's more of just the balance of the panels, not necessarily like I'm going to leave this blank space because I know something's going to go over it. It's more or less like, let me just define what that object is going to be, maybe something a little less detailed or a little, things like that. But like when it comes to selling like your original art and stuff like that, that's something I actually don't like. I don't do. I work like under NDAs most of the time, so it's something that's like, once it's in the publisher's hands, like they do it, so I don't really have control of that original artwork. So that's definitely a different fold or a different wrinkle to consider. That's just the process that I work under.
You definitely have to pay attention to it, especially when the artist is working. I found over the years, and then there's general rules to it, like the 30-70, as they call it, to leave 30% space for bubbling and then 70% for your art type mentalities. But I always liked what Stan Lee used to say, where he used to put them, now I think it was Andy Kubert's art, but he used to put bubbles over spots where he didn't like the art. So there's a mentality you can definitely have with how you do it, and it's really important for the eye to follow it, for sure.
Yeah, Yeah, I think it's, design is definitely a huge aspect in comic books that kind of separates like really, really talented like artists. Like when you look at that panel, you're like, holy crap, like this is not only really detailed, but it's designed really well. The flow of it moves, the eye in a really, really pleasing way. And it's something that, just needs to get a lot more focus, because I think a lot of the time we focus on, or artists can focus on hyper detailing things. And then it's like the panel itself looks very chaotic, or it's hard to see, it's hard to follow, hard to make out shapes. So design is very important. Silhouetting is very important. Things like that.
And leading the eye as well, like being able to instinctually know where to look to follow action, but also like bubble placement can do that as well.
Oh yeah, push it to the next panel. Yeah. And there's rules to it. I was really surprised when I started doing it for mine. Like there's actual rules to when you use certain bubbles in certain situations, and how you even the text itself is used. It's interesting.
Yeah, when I used for the Kickstarter now for Not So Fair Tales, I was able to get Carlos Mangual, who's done work for DC and Aftershock and other books, to actually do the lettering. And we had to discuss a few times, is this something inside a character's head? Is this like vocal? If the wording is from a character who was off screen, it also looks different. So it's like, okay, it was interesting. That was for me like a new way of, because I don't usually letter my own stuff, and once in a while I'll do it, but it's like I had to learn so much stuff. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And then realize that we have to switch it up a little bit in here.
I think it's actually a really good policy. You're talking about this exactly. To kind of like, no matter what position you're at, like filling within the role of like a comic creation, like you should probably know a little bit about every part. You know what I mean? Yes. So like if you're a writer, you should know a little bit about like the penciling process, the inking process, the lettering, the coloring process, at least some knowledge, so you can maybe just prepare, yourself or your other artists, I know you're going to pencil it, and I know this is what goes into it, so maybe I'll save you some time by, adding some detail in the writing stage, and then you can kind of pick it up from there. And then, with your colors, if you have some idea about, the kind of color theory you want, then maybe you can mention that to the colorist, and then it kind of makes his job a little easier. He has more direction, things like that. And then lettering, again, same thing. Is this going on in someone's head? Is this dialogue? Is this like, am I having a computer say it? So I want that little like, squared out, with like a digital font kind of thing. Like just having that knowledge is probably really, really helpful to the entire process when you're starting out.
I'm working with an artist now, and he said right in the middle of it, he's an amazing artist. He never even thought about it before, but I said, I don't want to put bubbles over the middle of your great art. That's the worst thing that I think can happen, is have to shove a bubble in there with a bunch of text right over. You just, I want it to look good.
And I recently had a writer approach me to do a book, like a small story for an anthology. And being a writer as well, I can see where he was coming from. He wants to say so much, and then I would see these panels, and he would have like 3 paragraphs for that. I'm like, dude, there's no way you could put that in there. I mean, if you want that, just write it as a prose story, because there's really nowhere to put the artwork.
Yeah,
and you need more pages if you want, because it's not going to fit in 7 or 8 pages as you want to do. It's like, so eventually we just never could agree. So I said, look,
the current project I'm working on actually right now is kind of similar, because they write in a very like narrative fashion, so it's not like dialogue based, which like comic books specifically are more dialogue based. They're in the moment. You can have narration and things like that, narration bubbles, but typically it's like person to person, action to action, things like that. And when you have like something that's more narrative based, it's more like a storybook. It's kind of more like a kid's book, or like a traditional illustrated book. So like we're having trouble where I was like, I think we need more pages to tell this story the way that you guys want to tell it, because you have a lot of these different actions, and we're trying to keep it to like 16 pages. I think this thing needs like 24 with the way that you guys are, approaching the storytelling, and like to have all these details reflected and tell the story the way you want it. I think we need more pages, and that's not in the budget. So it's kind of their challenge to kind of maybe delete some of the things that, like some of their expectations, to kind of take them down a little bit, and details to reduce at this point.
But a lot of that comes into the show don't tell as well. Like not always, but sometimes those details of the narrative you can show in the panels instead of literally writing it out.
Yeah, and I think it's it comes from a lot of the time. I've worked with a lot of comic writers that like come from like a novel kind of mindset where they're trying to be overly descriptive because they really want to push the point of like, here's what I'm seeing, here's what's going on. But that's something that's like, you know, when you're changing your rough draft into like something that's scriptable, you know, like that format changes where you know, this is the description of the panel and then here's the dialogue, you know. So it's like you have to break it up and learn how to, you know, really put your script into something that an artist can grab and then be like, okay, I know this is coming out of this dude's mouth and here's all the different details that they want in it, but like here's how I approach the storytelling aspect of it. So yeah, it's just really important for like, especially like indie creators, like up and comers, to like know how to format your work, and you know, so that when you give it to the artist, it's not like paragraphs of like, you know, dialogue where they're trying to figure out how do I even, you know, like what you're saying, Kike, how do I even like, you know, draw this stuff out, because it's all dialogue based and it's going to be like basically talking heads the entire time, you know. So you want to avoid that, and like you're saying, the show don't tell, you know, the telling part, that's for a novel. The showing part, that's for a comic, you know. So if you're writing a comic, try and leave it, you know, action based, you know, one action leads into the other and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And you can reverse that too, that with the artist, he'll try that, like they'll try it and squeeze that all in if you give it to them, right? They're trying to do their job, and you might end up with this big mess in the end if you don't think about it honestly. So that's the opposite end of that.
Yeah, and like right now, I've got a project here in front that and you can tell, like, I don't consider myself like a super novelist or super writer yet. You know, I've been doing it for a very short time, but I think that sometimes when we get involved in our own projects, you know, you think of something, but when you put it on the paper, you try to tell an artist how to project it. It's like you're trying to think of it in a way that it looks cinematic, but it really, when you look at it, you got to still do stills, you know. So, so even though you're thinking about, like, he wants me to do 2 panels, and I'm thinking, by the time you make me want to put the dialogue in, the actions are not going to match. You know, there's some gap. There's still like that missing illustration between the animation. So instead of going like this, or like make that jump, and that's why it's got to be in the middle. It's hard sometimes because then when you're constricted by page number, you know, then I'm going, wow, instead of 3 panels, maybe now we have to put 4 panels or 6 panels, and all of a sudden it becomes a lot more tight in something. So I don't know.
I found like when I've been writing, it's almost like there becomes like a post-art writing phase. Because, like, you know, there's what you write, then there's what you send to your artist, what you write and send to your artist, what your artist sends back. And then before I've either gone to the letter or started letting myself, I've had to rewrite my comic slightly. Like, and there's
constantly.
It's amazing. It is great. Like, well, this story is slightly different than I envisioned it, but you know, it's amazing. You know, sometimes you do have to go back to an artist and go, oh, that panel was really, really important to me. Can you and you've played around with it a wee bit. But other times, you know, it is like that you're passing your vision onto somebody else to incorporate your vision slightly differently. It's amazing.
I think, you know, just my personal opinion, and Greg knows this a lot, really, really well. I really like preach, like, you know, storyboarding, like for that transitional phase between like what you're writing and what you want the artist to actually like do on the page. So I think it's actually really important for like, because what you're saying with like the whole cinematography of your work, like sometimes we want it to feel like this movie. We want it to have like this importance and this feeling of grandeur, and then being grounded and you know, taking the viewer to different places with different, like, you know, looks and things like that. So it's really important if you want to have that really like deep kind of storytelling with the visuals, that you learn a little bit about storyboarding, so that way you can kind of guide and then say, this is a still image, this is what I want in this single image, and I can't fit 4 actions into one image, so I have to learn how to break those things up into, you know, single viewpoints. And then how are those things going to look? Is it going to be over the shoulder? Is it going to be, you know, from a long shot? Is it going to be a mid shot? Is it going to be hip up? You know, those kinds of things. When you learn those things as a writer, I think it just takes everything to the next level. And then when you pass it off to when you make storyboards and you pass it off to an artist with the script, it's like everything falls into place, and then they can just, you know, take it from there and execute those visuals really, really, you know, expertly.
Just gets everyone on the same page a bit more. I think having an artist that will really communicate with you as like throughout the process makes such a difference. Being able to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and even if you can say to the artist, if you have a better idea, or if there's something else that you think would look good, just tell me, and we'll talk about it, and we'll try and sort out something that'll work. But communication is so important.
My first artist that I had for our original issue of our flagship title, Seer Chronicles, he did not do like a good chunk of my script, so he didn't communicate about that. So that was fun.
Surprise.
Things in there that weren't part of it. Then I am now remastering it, and I trust the artist and everything because I already worked with like him, Adam Fields, on like other comics that I've done, like Ink. For Ink, we've actually did it kind of like the Marvel way with so I did write the script and I gave it to him, and then he kind of like took what I wrote and then drew it, but like altered it a little, and then we just went back and like completely changed the story but made it work. And I'm like, that is awesome, and it worked because people really liked the story. So like, oh, that's cool. So we now do this whole thing in Ink where there's like narration, and it's kind of like he's talking in the past tense. And so that's like a whole thing that we're doing with that story now. So that's cool. We just released to our digital backers, all backers, for our last Kickstarter, our solo series Scales, and I actually had to get the letterer to like shorten some of the dialogue and stuff. Like I had to shorten the dialogue of my script because I was like, oh, that takes up like the whole panel. Let's not do that. So I had to change that, and then I'm like, oh, well, the story's a little different, but it still works. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think it's interesting all the different ways to work, that people, the ways that feel comfortable, like again, the Marvel way, or, like personally, I prefer a lot of direction because like, for me, it's like, it's about execution. Like I want to focus on the actual like, penciling, the inking, and putting all my mental energy there. So if I have to like go back and forth with the writer, like sometimes it's fun and it you can evolve the story and things like that. But like if I'm working on a project, like I'm a freelance illustrator, like I have to keep moving on to the next project, so I like to form a great relationship with the writer or with the creative team. But at the same time, it's like we have to break up the mental energy stage because like as an artist, as a working artist, that's like your energy set, like you have a physical energy set and then a mental energy set. And like when you're working as an artist, you're using that mental and a little bit of the physical, right? Like, so you're bending over the art table, your arm might hurt, your elbow might hurt, at the end of the day, that kind of stuff. So just managing all those different things, like the workload, the energy level, the communication back and forth, those are all things that kind of get lost in the process or people don't really understand. Like, this is why like I can spend 10 hours working on something, but only 6 hours of actual work, so it's a very like up and down stage. Again, my preference is that the writer writes and gives me a lot of direction, and then I'll just execute, and then I'll send them back what I did, and they can say, well, X this out or change this, and I'll be like, cool, and I'll just do that. So that's kind of how I like to work. But also like I definitely see the validity in having something that's like changing throughout the process. Like the writer gives it to the artist puts in his input, and then the writer changes his direction, and it kind of forms to what it's it's like this meld of their personalities and their viewpoints and things like that. So that's really cool too.
Sometimes when I write, if I'm doing it myself, it's a lot easier. It's different. But for the stories I did in the Kickstarter, I spoke to one of the artists and I asked him, okay, what do you prefer? Straight up, like I say, panel 1, this, panel 2, this, panel 3, this, or you want me to give you first page, I want to see this kind of stuff, second page, this kind of stuff, etc. One of them says, that's what I want, Marvel. So I let him flow it, and then we made adjustments along the way on the layouts. On the other one, he wanted to be told. I wanted to know what every panel what you want to have. That way, I know exactly what you want me to execute, and I said perfect. So I just told him this. So that one I had to really go in there and say, okay, this is what we want to do for every page, and it worked perfect. Each one I was able to work with their strengths, and then John, who was a lot more flexible, he came up with different ideas, like the angles and stuff like that. That's why I wanted to say, give me the action angles. I know what I want, but I want you to show me what you think you can do, and then it worked out great.
And that's perfect. That's exactly what we're talking about. Good communication. Like you allowed that communication first and said, what do you work best with? And like you said, played off their strengths. And that's the best way to, I think, approach a creative project, you know? It's a great management strategy, you know, like a leader listens to his subordinates, you know what I mean? Listens to the people around him that are going to, you know, work and actually, you know, do his legwork. So that's a great management strategy, I think, as well.
Everybody involved in the process should want the same thing. You know, everybody wants the project to be successful. You know, if you're the artist, you want, you know, your motivations for that success might be different, but ultimately, everybody involved wants the best out of that project. So, absolutely, I think that communication is important because, you know, if you don't speak up and the project sucks because of it, then you've not only let you've possibly let the team down, but you've also let yourself down. You know?
Yeah, and that's an expensive mistake to make if you really think about it. If you're self-publishing as well, you know, so.
The artist gets paid, right? The creator is the one who has to make the money back.
Yes.
Exactly.
There's a project I did a one-pager on, and they gave me the script, but it was like these two they were saying there's a fight in the space. No description as to how they wanted it to look, what is involved, and stuff like that. I'm going like, all right, so I go and design everything real quick, and I put it up and go like, okay, this is what I got. And everybody's on the ground. Oh, great, talk to the writer. And I sent him a note. And I'm like, waited, no answer. And finally, the people of the project said, "Bro, we like what you did. If he doesn't like it, that's his problem. Go with it." And he finally answered me after about a few weeks ago. Like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. Oh, by the way, it really looks good. I'm glad you like it. It's done."
Asking for a portion of his pay.
I said it's done because I have to do everything. I did everything. I did everything that I said, even the lettering. So, I mean, when pencils, inks, color, and lettering. So I said, man, it's a lot of work to make sure it's good.
Yeah, it's honestly such a demanding process, like, you know, to have the whole team working together and everybody's time kind of coordinating. Like, I work with a team in New Zealand, so like they're on a completely different time zone, which is pretty much opposite of where I live in Chicago. So it can be very challenging, you know, and just demanding for everybody that's involved, you know, and working through your own personal issues and things like that and stuff. So I think it's really cool that there's so many indies kind of like coming up in the industry right now and creating, because it's a tough thing and not a lot of people understand that.
Yeah, you're totally right. A lot of people don't realize how hard it is to make a comic book. They just seem to think you can just, you know, do it. I don't know how many people just think, oh yeah, it's easy. Like, no, moving parts everywhere, man.
Procreate, man. If people think they can do anything, like, oh, just press a button, there it is.
Yeah. Especially the drawing too. Like just, can't you teach me how to draw?
Isn't there an app for that?
Yeah. Shiny red button somewhere.
I don't know if you guys like hand like I. When I've in my previous Kickstarters, I've gone to the post office, you know, with like a pile of them with all stamped up, ready to go, and there's that question that totally boggles my mind every time, where the lovely lady behind the counter says, you know, and what's the value of the comic? And I'm like, well, what are you delivering? Oh, it's a comic. What's its value? And I'm like, well, that's a really complex question you're asking me. You know? It does
personally, or like
to me.
I hug each one every night right before I mail.
It's super valuable to me.
Exactly.
Does anybody have an answer for Tom?
Well, it depends how long it's been, really.
Oh, I'm in that boat right now, actually.
Exactly. I totally agree with Tom. I don't want to feel like I think a lot of the advice you get is to just share as much as you can. But I have that same worry about spamming and folk going, oh, it's that boy again with that same comic, you know. So
to that point though, you would be surprised about how much doesn't get seen. If you're posting on Facebook and Twitter and stuff, the algorithms are set that so much of what you post just gets lost. So a lot of times when you're posting, even though it feels to you like you're posting a lot, different people are seeing it, or not many people are seeing it. So you really do have to basically spam and just sort of hope for the best. But every campaign sort of stalls and goes quiet in the middle.
Yeah, it always happens. Yeah.
And remember, like, or what I would suggest is, there's a plateau. Make like a countdown for when like the thing is gonna end. So like really make sure you're getting that point across. Like this is a limited time to like have this thing fund. This last week or 10 days or however long you want to put that countdown for. Just really up that the pressure. Put the pressure on the people that you're talking to, your viewers, and really make sure they know like this is the last chance to take advantage of this offer. So I would say that might be a good suggestion. But yeah, there's a plateau that happens I think at every campaign. Just powering through it and keep doing what you're doing, man. Just keep sharing and be very genuine about it. Like just spam with heart, if that makes sense.
I'm looking at it. He says here 20 days left at 59%. Is not really bad when you think about it.
Way better than where I'm at right now. Yeah.
That is, you're pretty much, according to the analytics that they usually send out, that's pretty much right around where you should be on an average a campaign. In our case, we were extraordinarily lucky. But again, I was posting about it and sharing about our campaign. I mean, I know Greg probably got tired of seeing me post on it all over the place about it. But we hit 50% on the first day, almost.
That's amazing.
And then it went that deep dive, and like then it's kind of like trickling, and now we're like a 98%, I think, something like that, with 18 days to go. So the analytics say we're going to get there, but the thing is that right now, I think Ben mentioned it, the way the algorithms are working. So in reality, you may think you're throwing it out there like overly over. Times you won't see it. Like you just don't get it. You just don't receive it. Sometimes I receive things I see like, oh, look at this is great. Scott's going to be on this show. Oh, this was 2 days ago. So you don't see it on time. So, and personally, what I did, and this is why I could, who was it saying it, Tom? I'm doing what they call like a media tour for the book. I'm going to be on like on 11 shows. I mean, eventually somebody will watch it. I'll hit some targets that I'm missing through my regular promotions on my own stuff. So you just have to. And I'm going to different places. I've never been on this show, so hopefully a new group of people will say, "Hey, who's this guy?"
Exactly.
And they keep changing it around. Just if you keep going to the same shows, which are cool because you like the same people, you hang out all the time, you're getting the same people. You're not expanding your market. This is why I try to find as different in variety, so I can go like, okay, now some people might say, I don't know this guy, but let me check what he's got out there. So that's what I could recommend. If you're that stalled, just try to find new areas to explore.
New bubbles, as I call them. But you have to be careful that you don't over spam. I think there's a balance almost there. My friend Corey Hardiman, who does Sister Mercy, his account recently got shadow blocked right in the middle of his campaign right now. And I think it's called shadow block. I've never even heard of it, but apparently Facebook will block you.
I know that.
Yeah, and especially like I would say too. If you're not putting money into Facebook, like or these different platforms, like for advertising, they're definitely gonna like not put you at a good standing in the algorithm. Like if you are putting some money in, your algorithm might be a little better just in general. But yeah, so I think it's ad spend as well.
But even though before you could put $10 in, like months ago, you could put $10 into Facebook, and you may get 10,000 views or something on that, or reach 10,000. Now you put in $100, you may not even get to the same 10,000. So it's really, it's not, it's money, like investment wise, it's not as good as it used to be. Even if
I agree.
I spend money.
Yeah, I think you have to pick a platform that's really going to work for you. You know what I mean? Like like something like TikTok, they're not monetized yet in terms of like, promotion and stuff like that. So you can reach like a really great amount of people like organically without spending any money. So I think find the platform that kind of works for you and your genre and things like that. Twitter's great as well. There's no paywall behind Twitter. So if you can really make an impact on Twitter, even YouTube, going on podcasts, like again, the whole bubble sets and just putting yourself into different places where people are going to see you and different networks and things like that. That's probably like the best way to go.
Also, it's making it really folk as well. Like I find it's interesting what you were saying, Enrique, about the media tour, because that's something I haven't done before. But like just reaching out to guys like Greg and having a wee chat. Nothing else. I've made some friends, which is really, really cool. And just and met folk that are in. We talk a lot about this on my show about the joy, the major joy, if there is such a thing to have ever come out of a lockdown or a COVID, is the fact that we're chatting to folk in a way that we never did before. The international community, it has grown tremendously since lockdown. So
I just helped a few people with their Kickstarter this past month, Heavens Decoded. And I just made like a shit ton of memes, and that worked. So, and it's
I never thought about memes. That's a great idea.
I did that, and there was not really a slow day. There was like I think one day that there was no backers, but every other day out of the 30 days there was a backer.
Yeah, the meme was definitely strong, bro.
Yeah.
Making the meme right now. That's a great idea.
and since it's a sci-fi comic, sci-fi fantasy, it was around when Star Wars Day was happening, so I was like, I'm gonna, go off of that. So I did like a Grogu meme, and I'm like, don't make Baby Yoda like mad or sad, and I got somebody to back the Kickstarter because of that meme. Like, we can't make him sad.
They're doing a meme generator as we speak.
No, but it's really great because I remember when I tried to start in this industry in the 80s, you had to be lucky that if you're a writer, that your next door neighbor or somebody down the block could draw, and if somebody else could do some inking and stuff. Now it's like, wait a minute, let me go online. I need a colorist. Boom, you get hit by hundreds of tons. And that's the advantage we have now, that there just really is an incredible community that's hungry to help and hungry to work, hungry to do stuff. And you can always find somebody. Will they all be the same level? No, but that's why the price range are, and that's why you got to invest, so you help other people. So I really like that fact that, like, we got Jeff here, he's in Scotland. I worked with Sigmund Torre while he's in Singapore. Okay, so and we're like he's in the Philippines. So yeah, so that 12-hour difference, I say, okay, we're gonna meet up and talk here. It's like it was early morning for him, late night for me. And we got the work done. On the Kickstarter, we have people from Canada, Australia, Germany, all involved. So it's amazing. It's a multinational thing, multi-continental. That's what John likes to say. So that's what I think is really cool about all this, that nowadays you can bring in talent that you would never have thought about finding years ago, because they're now available to everybody. Like, everybody can actually talk to them and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's funny what you said about like that. I reached out to Graham Manley, who was one of my favorite. He drew a couple of Judge Dredd stories in the 90s. I really like him. Because of this international community mind, I assumed that he lived miles away from where, like in somewhere like, so I'm in Scotland. I assumed he lived in England if he lived in the UK at all. And I had the almost reverse bit where like we got talking and I worked out that I could walk to his house. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Like, our platform has like people from Ireland and Argentina, and I'm like, oh wow, this is insane. So yeah, like that wouldn't have been a thing like just like years ago. So that's pretty cool.
And it can save you some money too. Like, I'm working with people from the Philippines, England, the States, you know what I mean? Brazil. It's crazy once you get out there. But nothing would be done without it right now, I don't think. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, the exchange rate definitely helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, the colors that I use for every one of my comics, even our anthology, Chronicles of Horror, he's in Indonesia, and he's amazing.
He's awesome.
I love how I just found
so
him
good.
when I was doing my first comic, and then I'm like, I'm gonna just use you for everything now because you're just awesome. And I can talk to him like at his normal time because I work an overnight job, so he's awake when I'm at work, not doing anything. So it works out. Yeah.
Is any commenters have any topics that they want to ask this
No, Tom's the
panel
only
of creatives?
Little something there going on. Here we go.
Have any of you been to Comic Cons this year? Because there are a few that are.
I just did one last weekend.
Amazing.
And it's the Garden State Comic Fest. It's traditionally done in Morristown in where there are two hockey rinks. Usually what they do is that they like take all the ice out and then put us in there. About a few years ago, the ice actually started seeping back up, and it was funny. All our stuff got wet. It's not funny actually, but after that, it's got fixed. But this year, because of all this situation of COVID and stuff, we ended up doing it in a mall in a former Saks Fifth Avenue store. So it's funny to see all our art and on top saying bras and
Yes.
I was like, well, that's interesting. And if you know, where are you located? Look for the men's clotheswear. That's my section, you know.
I'm in the lingerie section in the corner there.
Sales just went up.
But it was really good because they gave me this nice area. I mean, I was in the best spot with them. I had a great group of people around me. I mean, let's face it, you know, I'm a guy who's just kind of getting known to. Then I have Keith Williams on my right, Scott Hanna on my left, with Chris Ivey on the other side, and Howard Mackey, Riley Brown. That's our section, and it was packed all day. And then I was next to this curved wall. Therefore, our tables are straight, but the wall is going behind away. So I could use everything. So I was able to put extra tables. I looked like I was inside this huge booth. It was great. It was one of my best shows in a long time. A lot of people I felt were were so happy to be out in a show. To the fan base wise, you know, us as creators, yes, because we get to see each other and stuff. But the fans to come out, and I mean, I have people who usually commission me by mail. They actually showed up and said, "Hey, you're here now. Let's talk and this stuff." So. But now everything's going to start picking up again. I mean, there are small shows. I mean, like for example, Keith this week is doing a small show in New Jersey. I think today's in New York. But these are like 1 days, and I like to do the bigger ones now because that's set up for 1 day and pulled down in 1 day. I like to do the bigger shows like 2 or 3 days. And I'll be doing an Ohio tour. I'm going to be doing. Starting in Dayton, then I come back, leave, then go back for Cincinnati, then I go back for Akron. So I'm going. I was going to do really big last year, so this year it's like kind of smaller. So, but I like the fact that the bigger ones are trying to come back. New York Comic Con says they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it. So, Florida Superfest is going to be up. Baltimore's going to be up. So, let's see how it all goes, man.
Yeah, we were supposed to do our whole Comic Con thing last year, and then last year happened, so
over in the UK, it's quite bleak in the UK. There's no shows. I went to a show today that was but it was advertised as a market rather than a comic convention, and it was just quite bleak. I think as a result, it's funny that you were saying about the sort of seeing the bras and stuff like that. So the show that we were at was it was famous, sort of infamous, kind of locally for there being like an exodus of shops. So it was in a shopping center, this thing, but there's been a fallout with local retailers and the ownership, and essentially it's close to abandoned, this shopping center. So it was like you're walking through and there was all these empty shop fronts, and then in the middle there was about a dozen tables, and that was what was getting that billed as a convention. But because it was the first convention of the year in inverted commas, it was really bleak. it was really busy, but really quite depressing at the same time. It was I've never quite seen anything like it, to be honest.
I got to ask you a really important question. Is there a Wookiee running your camera or something? I like his brown hair all of a sudden.
No, this is my partner in crime, Sonny.
Oh, cool.
He's hiding from us now. It's my anybody that watches my show, like, I have children, I have cats and dogs, all just kind of
cats. Yeah, cats too. I was worried about.
You have that one as well, where you're making a really, really serious point about about like a piece of comic you've read, and then your dog walks past, or your child asks you to like open a packet of crisps. It's crazy.
So Tom said, what would some advice each of you would give new creators if you could write down one or two things?
Can I just say the only piece of advice that I've been given this year that I wish I was given, my first comic that I've ever written is this series, which is essentially going to be 6 parts when it's finished. It's now on part 3. I spoke to Steve Tanner of Time Bomb Comics a couple of weeks ago, and he said that if he could offer anybody any advice, it would be to start with a short story, start small, and go from there. I wish I'd heard that this time last year.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If you're a new creator, to have like a smaller project so you can work out all the gears, like something that's 5 pages, 10 pages, something like that, where if you have to pay an artist, or you're going to pay an artist, if you don't have anybody that you're working with, like on some work for the exposure type stuff, it keeps the budget low, and then you can again go through all the steps. You can figure out how each thing is going to go in a 10-page setting, and then you can start building up your fan base from there. Once they see you having like a small project like that, or even like a small strip or comic strip like that's on Instagram or something like that, that's a couple panels, and you do it maybe once a month or something, just something smaller scaled, that you can again build your fan base and work out the different steps of the process. I think that's a great place to start, and that's great advice as well.
I would go even further in that, like following that idea is what I've done. And I kind of fell into this, and it's working well, is that if you're a writer or you're just trying to get in just to start, try to find an anthology, because those are like, even the one you got, Greg, you guys use Seer, which are like that, the horror one you got, those just small stories, short stories and stuff, because that gives you an opportunity to do what you can in a very limited amount of pages, either as a writer, as an artist, as an inker, as a colorist. And that way, I mean, for me, I did one at the beginning of last year, April, the very first one. And when I look at it back at it now, I cringe, because I see all the mistakes I made, all the things I did. I said, man, why did I do it like that? Why did I put those panels this way? And then I go like, that's not going to happen again. So when I did Horrendous, everything looked a lot better. And I figured out a way moving stuff around. I go, okay, then. So by the time I got to now, I had already gone to the point, okay, now I'm going to bring in people to help me do this even better instead of doing it all myself. But when I did my own all completely with me, I had a whole different idea to work it. So, but by going through the little ones first, then you get to the bigger one, and then you're like much more prepared for those inconveniences that show up, Cool. So even if it's just a 2-page story in an anthology, it's just great practice, great rule, because that's, for me, even that's hard sometimes. How can I tell a story in 2 pages?
It's a great exercise. Yeah,
you have to good to work it out.
Silent comic is actually really challenging too. There's actually going to be a silent comic. There's one word in it that's going to be in the 2nd issue of Chronicles of Horror.
Shit.
Yeah, the only word. Entire 4 pages or whatever it is. Jason Webb wrote that, and I'm like, wrote that. He directed that.
He just did something. We don't know. He didn't. He
just
communicated it, some way.
Yeah. I mean, my Horrendous story, I did it on purpose. There's no dialogue. I mean, there were at one time some caption boxes, but my daughter looked at it. She says, Dad, they don't really need those. The story flows without it. The only words in there are the sound effects that I put for certain things. And it worked. So, dialogue, no dialogue. And the only reason I didn't do any dialogue is because I didn't want to lose the lettering. I got lazy. Yeah. No lettering. I'm not going to put any, no. But
I think that, for a silent comic, just to kind of interrupt you really quickly, again, it's another great exercise. It's telling a story without actually using like dialogue and words and narration. Like, it's just all about the actions, which is a really, really good way to write comics. Like, to write comics, to get yourself in the brain of, I have to tell it sequentially, literally, like what the viewer is seeing scene by scene. So it's a great exercise, I think.
I think another bit of advice I would give is sticking to your guns. You'll get a lot as a creator, well, not a lot, but you'll get people who will discourage you and sort of down talk what you do and talk you out of it. And I think while there may be things worth listening to in that advice and stuff, you really need to have a bit of energy of screw it, I'm going to do it anyway, or I'm going to fight through and do what I want to do. You really have to believe in yourself and your project, sort of no matter what people say,
Yeah, and taking the right kind of like criticism from the people who actually know what they're talking about, as opposed to like somebody who's just running up on your post who has no experience, who's just like a looky-loo and is just talking crap to you. Like that's not the people you should pay attention to. But if somebody's like an actual comic creator, they've done a lot of work, and they're saying like, hey, well, if it's that kind of person, they probably won't shit on you. They're probably going to tell you like, hey, there's better ways to do it, or like I can teach you some things, or here's some helpful advice like how we're doing right now. So they'll probably put it to you in a much better way than discouragement. It'll be much more like critique, which is it's much easier to accept that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely don't listen to the randos on the internet, but listen to like the people who know what they're talking about.
And if I was to throw 2 cents in there, I'm kind of in a different boat in the sense that I'm totally new to this Kickstarter scene and trying to figure it out. But I've been doing this my lifetime since I was a teenager, so it's been a long time. But build it up brick by brick, you know what I mean? And don't let walls get in your way is what I would say. You have to find a way around them, under them, over top of them. But also you have this amazing medium that I didn't have, that is the internet. You have YouTube. You have this. You have so many ways to learn. You just have to embrace it, really.
My advice would be, don't launch a Kickstarter if you don't have like any pages done for your comic. We did an Indiegogo like when we first started, like 2017, and we're like, I just want money, and that happened. So that failed, and then we did a Kickstarter. We had like a huge goal because we're stupid. I'm stupid. And Dylan's like, you should have listened to me, and I didn't. So then we did another Kickstarter, and that actually worked because I followed his advice and read this book that he told me that kept reading. And then I came up with all these steps that are kind of like from that book, but I made it for Kickstarter and for comics and stuff, which is on our blog. And then another thing is, if you want to make a comic book and you need an artist or a writer or whatever, you should have the money to pay them and not just not pay them, because the first artist that I had, he actually came to me to ask if I could help him. I didn't help him because I just didn't know what to do. This dude, the Ricardo guy, was in Brazil, and he was getting ripped off by some guy in California, and the guy got a whole comic book done by Ricardo and didn't pay him a cent. And I was like, that's annoying.
There's no integrity.
It's like, yeah, could you like help me? I'm like, how am I gonna help you? Like, I'm states away. I'm on the other side of the country. I'm in New York, and he's all the way in California. I'm not gonna go to his house and like beat him up. Where's my money? So I can't like help you. So he's like, I'll just take the loss. I mean, you just took an entire comic book.
That's not a loss.
They have to understand how to protect themselves for sure. Know how to protect yourself is probably the best thing I heard of that. Yeah.
Or it could go the other way. Like I invested in somebody, paid them, and then they didn't produce it.
It
goes the other way, that I made the investment and the person just didn't come out with it. It stayed there. I had to end up doing it myself. So I lost the money there. The person didn't show up and fail. So it goes both ways. It's like
Absolutely.
You can take an advantage, and like either by giving the money and not getting anything back, or like doing it and then not getting any producing and not getting paid for it. So
and on that, sorry, go for it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, on this, to elaborate on that too, like contracts aren't a bad thing when it comes to this kind of stuff. Having things written out, even if it's just very loose, like it's not something that's like super legally written and in that jargon. Just to have an agreement of all the expectations of when the deadlines are supposed to be and things like that. So at least if you do, like if you're, make a huge investment and that person tries to rip you off, you have some form of legitimate case to like, take take them on with, you know. So you have written agreements and understandings, and then most people that, you know, it's actually a good kind of like filtering system, because if somebody doesn't want to do those steps or is too busy to take those steps, it's not somebody you want to work with anyway. So that's a great way to kind of filter people out.
And to protect yourself, real important technology that I 100% use is PayPal. And don't let people ever tell you to send it as a friend. No offense to that, pay the fees on their end to cover them. But what PayPal allows you to do is it covers your money. If anything happens, they don't do the work, you click a button, you list a complaint, and they back it every time. So that saved me a lot of money. I've lost a lot of money as well, unfortunately, over the years. You have people who are really into it and people who are just going to, there's people out there who are just going to run away with your money, honestly, on both sides of the fence. We all like to say it's on this side of the fence or that side of the fence. I know it's informed, but it's both sides of the fence where we're having the problems.
Yeah. I should have actually, sorry.
No, go ahead, Greg.
I should have actually done that with this one artist, because he made like 3 pages for me, and then he didn't finish the comic after I paid him for the rest. It's for this like holiday comic that I was going to do like years ago, and I posted about it on like our Instagram like a couple days ago or like a week ago, and I was like, yeah, throwback to when I got ripped off. And he just like disappeared one day. Like he did 3 pages, and then I'm like, where'd you go? So he just took my money and ran. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And I just didn't submit into PayPal like to get my money back because I'm stupid.
So when you guys pay artists, like how I generally do it is pay for a few like 5 pages at a time, sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how I do it.
Great point too. Like, yeah, that keeps the artist going. You know what I mean? And I don't mind putting some money up front to help them, because I understand it's a job in the end for them to get them going. But yeah, definitely, I would. Yeah, that's a really good point, because you don't want to pay someone for 28 pages and then find out they're not going to complete it halfway through.
Yeah.
Not even out of them doing it maliciously. Like sometimes things just happen. They might get sick or whatever, and they just can't do it. Yeah.
And as we said, the world has opened up. We don't know what's happening in those other countries. Like I was working with a colorist at one point, and there was a cyclone that went through the Philippines, right? And I mean, like, the power's out, everything's gone, you've lost communications. It's not their fault, right?
Yeah.
In some sense.
What were you going to say, Enrique?
Okay, sorry. What I try to do if I'm doing the writing, again, I need an artist to help me, and the funds are short or whatever, or the project is not going to provide any incentive because I'm being asked to do it almost basically for free as well. Sometimes I'll negotiate and say, look, do you want payment? Because I need your pay rate. Let me see if I can afford you. Here you go. Or I can do other things. I won't pay you. All right. But as the creator, I control the interest of the project. But I will let you take your original art. If he's a penciler, you can sell it. You can sell it and make money off of that. Is that acceptable for you? Yes or no? Okay, yes, good. We can keep going. No, we keep working on it. And then we can reach an agreement. Like, but for a colorist, it's a lot harder now. You know, if I tell him, yeah, you want to do that, he goes like, yeah, but what am I going to do? Well, you got these, what is these, the things they're doing now with the digital stuff?
NFTs,
yeah.
NFTs, yeah. So now colors can actually get some stuff paid for that kind of work on their own artwork, unless you're doing it for the big guns and then they hold you off to it. But on a project like Sigmund, I paid him to do the colors for the Jacko story, but I could have maybe said, look, if you want, you can just use that and try to sell it off and do an FT and with that, you know, and maybe get paid that way. At that time he wasn't around. We asked him that. So I mean, there are ways to get into an agreement, but like you said, once you have it established, you know, write it down and then go like, okay, this is what we agreed upon, right? Good. You know, and up to now, every time I do that, I got no problems with anybody. Everybody
no gentleman's agreements. No, like, don't talk it out. Like, literally write it down, put it all in email. Like, that's something I've had, again, it works both ways. As an artist, I've had, you know, people that commission me for projects or something like that. I used to be a designer as well. So like graphic design is it's the same kind of industry when it comes to this stuff. And, you know, they waste your time negotiating different things and all this kind of stuff. You get started on a project and then there's no money there, right? So it's like, you know, you've wasted time and energy and things like that, and you've just communicated that stuff like through a phone call or something like that. And so now you have nothing. You have no proof of that conversation really ever happened, you know? So it's just a good way to, again, keep everything in writing, put it all in email, put it all in somewhere where you can go back to it and look at it and say like, and then if there's any misunderstandings of like, here's what you expected from me, like it's all right there. It's all in that email. If you're telling me you expected 12 pages when you only paid me for 10, or we agreed on 10, there you go. Here's the proof of that. Here's the receipt. It's just a really good practice.
It's a professional way of doing things. And if you're doing this to make money, if you're trying to sell your book, you're trying to be professional. So you've got to do this as a business. Really, you have to do it that way.
Totally.
Yes, learn a lot more business practices if you're going to be working in the comic industry, or working in any section of it. Even a letterer should have his business kind of mindset and things like that. And not to put letterers down, I mean, it's a completely legitimate thing. Like it's weird that it just came off that way, but no, letterers are extremely important. And Jerome, working on Chronicles of Horror, I mean, there's going to be SFX kind of things in there and stuff like that, so you expect it at different panels, but just the way that they're able to fit certain sound effects and the dialogue and things like that, and knowing when to do what things, and it's a really important part of the process as well. So definitely changed my viewpoint. Some of the pages that I thought were kind of lacking, it added in those extra like little details that kind of really make it exciting and make your eye move and things like that. So great letterer is definitely a good investment.
Absolutely, yes.
Agreed.
So if everybody wants to go around and like talk about their Kickstarter one last time, that would be cool. So let's start with Ben.
So Any Port in Storm is a one-shot sci-fi graphic novel. It's on Kickstarter now. We're about 25%. It's set after teleportation has been criminalized because it started like mutated corpses started showing up on the streets. So the government banned it, and because of that, they're shutting down Storm City, which is a city that was built sort of in the most inaccessible place on the planet, right high up in this mountain range that you can't get to except for teleporting. So they're shutting it down, and this group of people is trying to save their home. There's space stuff, there's body horror, but it's for teens and up basically. There's no swearing, there's no sex. It's fun.
Is that link in here somewhere? Is that the link in?
Yeah, it's somewhere, but I'll just put it again.
I'll put it up. I'll check it later there. All right.
I was gonna say you can get to a place.
I like the idea of this thing outlawed, man. Okay, my Kickstarter again. It's Not So Fair Tales. It's a compass. It's 35 different creators working together to make 19 different stories. We got creators all over the world. Some of them you recognize from being online. They've done works like Cleothu is Hard to Spell, Last Embers, all that kind of stuff. So those Brand Fowler, Russell Nolte, Nick Torres, Cesar Gutierrez, Jorge Luis Gavato. I mean, the list is on and on. You go on the Kickstarter, you can see everybody involved. Clay Adams is involved. He has right now. He has a Kickstarter running as well. We're only 5% away from our goal with 18 days to go. It's a beautiful 172-page hardcover. I got 3 stories in there, and the pride of joy of mine is that my 17-year-old daughter actually had her story accepted. It's in the book as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, and she's off to FIT in the fall. So yeah, it's like really proud of her, and to the point now that I can actually say that we're actually doing a collaboration for another anthology. We're actually going to do our first work together. I'm doing breakdowns and most of the pencils, and then she finish the digital and do the coloring. So,
congratulations, that's awesome.
Yeah, I finally had to convince her to do it. She didn't want to do it. I don't want to work with my dad. No, but it's awesome. It's awesome. So anyway, the Kickstarter is we're still got 18 days away. We've got right now we're doing the backer goals. So right now we're only 6 away from hitting the 250. So if you back, you're getting 9 extra comics digitally is sent to you with that Kickstarter. And if we hit this next 6, which we should, you'll get another 3. So you'll be getting not only the book, but another 12 books to read on top of your pledging. So
Go back
I
right
hope
now.
you'll have everybody get an opportunity to check it out and really look at it, because I'm telling you, there is something for everybody. Like pretty much like Ben says, there's no swearing. It's all very family oriented. And even though if you know the history of fairy tales did not always end well. And that doesn't mean these end well. It just, you're not going to see blood and guts and everything. So I must admit, one of my stories, I got real close. We went to the line, and it almost got censored. But it was funny because that's one of the cases we talked about, how we can use the dialogue and word balloons to hide stuff. You were saying you don't want it to be behind things. I was saying, look, we could put the word balloon here.
Off-screen death.
So you don't see it; it's hidden, But if anybody who reads my stories, they know I like to hide things in there. So even if you might not see it, there is something hidden everywhere. So a lot of homages to my heroes and stuff. And I'm a big fan of EC Comics, and those guys used to hide a lot of stuff. So if you look at those panels real carefully, people, you might be surprised what you find in there. All right, so thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Hope you check it out.
Jeff.
Sorry, I'm just backing everyone's Kickstarter as you are talking. I have a series that's issue 3 is in the process of, I'm coloring it as we speak. So it's got 5 days left on the Kickstarter. It's called The Spirit of Enki. Enki spelled Enki. Who's the Mesopotamian god of fertility and water and loads of other things. It's a superhero adventure comic set in Iraq, where a sort of disgraced army captain turned private security contractor is protecting a young Iraqi archaeologist when superhero shit starts to happen. Pardon, I swore. I'm sorry. There is no swearing. There is no swearing in the comic. We are fully funded. I deliberately try and get as much of the work paid for and done and out the way before I go to Kickstarter. So actually, we are fully funded because the Kickstarter I made the target really, really low, deliberately. But we are funded. There's 5 days left. Anybody that backs, I think, let me double check, I think about £5 a UK, which I think works out $10 ish. You'll get the PDF of issues 1, 2, and 3, including all the artwork, the variant covers. Commando Comics is Colin Maxwell did the art for issue 2 on a favour because he's like my best mate. And I've just got James Lawrence, who has a phenomenal series called The Legend of La Mariposa. He's done I'm in love with the cover for my issue 3, which anybody on Kickstarter can see. He's gone all kaiju with it, and it looks just great with my antagonists having a punch up on the front cover. So please check out The Spirit of Enki. I'm really quite proud of it, and I hope other folk are too.
Awesome.
Sweet. Duran.
All right. So I'm doing the Forsaken Future 3 on Kickstarter right now. I'm in a dogfight, and I'm also learning. This is my first experience here with Kickstarters and this whole out of my bubble kind of experience, even on these podcasts and that. So hopefully you guys will back and check it out. It's about a dark future after where genetics have just started to happen, or mutation has just started to happen, and what's happening in that society after there was the destruction of the North American way of life. And we're introducing the character called Razorwing, who is, I didn't want to have superhero names in it, but it makes sense to this situation because he's the first mutant, and he's kind of being used as a publicity type thing for the mutation corporation that's doing the mutations, Lizer Enterprises. So that's the only reason he has this kind of superhero type name. I didn't want to include that, but it's really about a collision of mutation and technology. And unfortunately, I'm going to be the opposite of some comments here. There's lots of blood and gore. There's lots of. I love a good action scene.
Yes.
I haven't shown it maybe in the pages of it, but yeah, this issue is a slobber knocker, as I say on it. It's a big fight as it introduces Razorwing and all that. And I invite everybody to forsake the future and to check out whitefirecomics.com, because I got a lot of other stuff coming up, including Raquel. Quint's Curse, which is going to be amazing Halloween release, I'm hoping.
That's cool.
Sweet.
Awesome. Tom was wondering, Enrique, if there's an anthology that he can be a part of that you know of.
I would say go directly to right now. Well, the ones I'm working on, they're all closed. But if you go to Facebook and you do a search, there is a group called, I think it's called Comic Book Anthology Creators. You can go in there and you're constantly, and once you get in there, you're always seeing the new people say, look, I'm going to start this, or I want to participate in this. And that's a great medium to do. And in there, I actually posted the other day a note saying, look, if I'm a writer, if you need somebody to write your story because you're an artist and know how to do it, I can do it for you. If you're a writer and need an artist, I can do it. You just post these things and you get calls in. I got a call immediately. Somebody saying, oh, I need this here. Oh, you only got like 5 days. We're like, what? So I'm like, no, I don't think I have enough. But then he goes, I'll pay you this much. Okay, now we're talking. So the rush fee, like I used to say in advertising. So yeah, so they're always available. And I would say just check out on Instagram. You'll also see stuff. And even if there's already out there, like for example, even if you really see like the Kickstarter we're doing now or anybody else's Kickstarter, just because the anthology is done or being promoted now doesn't mean you can't get in on the next one. So always contact people involved in those. And that's what I did. And therefore, look, next time you know something, let me know. I might be interested. And, it's like, I've been trying to get into the Chronicles of Horror and they still won't let me in. I don't know what's going on. I mean,
nobody told me this.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the guy. He's the guy that emailed me like, as soon as we went on Kickstarter for the first one. And I was like, oh shit. And then oh, sorry, I swore. And then, so a third issue you can be in the third issue. And Tom is, I guess, going to be in the third issue because he just asked. So we are working on a horror Cinderella.
Wow. All right. So Cinderella's fun for that because my daughter did that for the anthology and she did a very beautiful, rendition of a better modern day. It's still with the aesthetics of the medieval time kind of stuff, but it's got modern sensibilities in it, and it's absolutely not because she's my daughter. It's just really really good, and she gave me credit for editing because I was basically there just to help her get the flow right. Making sure because she was doing too much work in areas. Oh, you don't need that. Take this out. Move this stuff. I mean, she was going as far as like when there's a moment that the messenger's giving her Cinderella the note for the ball, and she wanted to draw the whole guy. I go, no, you don't need that. Just put the hand. Just put the hand there. That's all you do. You don't need to focus on that. Yeah. And it was great. I mean, she did a great job. So it's good to see a lot of people doing all these things. Fairy tales are a great source for inspiration because so many people know them that when you come up with something really unique, it really helps people because they can identify, oh, I wasn't expecting that. That's cool. So definitely go with that. Horror Cinderella. It's going to be interesting. I'm intrigued. I was
gonna say there's also a Twitter account called @FindAnthologies that often posts up all the different anthologies that are running. They're really good to follow.
Cool. Epic. I did want to be in Travis Gibbs' new anthology that's coming out this year called Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, but wasn't asked, so whatever.
Shade.
Probably because he just didn't even think I would, because I'm already busy with like 7 other things. So.
And another thing I want to just don't be discouraged when you get rejected when you try to do these anthologies. I've gotten more rejections than approvals for them, and Russell Nerty was the guy. He rejected my idea for. He didn't reject it. I didn't get approved for the last book of his, the Cleathu. It's hard to spell, the final one. And he explained it to me really well. He says, at that moment, now he knows because we both worked on this Kickstarter. He says, at that moment, he says, I don't know you. So you're trying to come in here and tell me, first, I don't know you as a writer. I don't know your artist. And you want to have the maximum amount of pages, and that scares a person because you go like, if you crap the bed, how am I going to fill in 8 or 10 pages out of nowhere, So had you come in here with a 2-pager, I might have said, yeah, let's give him a shot, because 2 pages, I can find something to fit. So if that's what I'm telling to people, don't oversell it if you can, or if you do know somebody really well, and then they can trust you, then you might be able to go in there more aggressive, which is what's happening now, that people that know me are tapping me on the shoulder saying, look, why don't you do this one now? Try this one now. And once you're in that group, once you find a nice little group of anthologists who work together, you start seeing each other in almost all the same stuff. You call each other, hey, I got into this one. Go over here. It's like, check this one out. So that's the biggest networking you can do. Find a good one and good group of people, and then you're pretty much set. You're pretty much set.
With our whole platform that we have going on, SeerNova, that Chronicles of Horror thing is like the first like collaborative project that we've been doing as like people on our platform. So we're actually thinking of trying to do like a sci-fi one or something. We just don't have an idea for that yet. And
we want to do multiple genres of like comics as anthologies.
We have 2 people on there that really want to do like a Shonen Jump magazine kind of thing, because they're like manga people. So I'm like, oh, that'd be pretty cool, but like I need more manga people. So
I'll send you my daughter.
Yeah,
my intern might be into that too.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she was all into the Voltron at one time, man.
I love classic anime, so don't get me on that. Oh wait, she'd probably be more new generation Voltron.
That was a badass show.
It was really well done.
Yeah.
I did this for the Kickstarter. This is basically taking the Akira poster, and we did it with my character from one of the stores.
I have an Akira reference image as well. It's on my computer though. I'm not gonna show it to you.
Well,
yeah, but that's funny because I just told John, let's do Akira, and I thought he was going to put a motorcycle or a car or something, and he goes like, no, let's put the monster at the end. And I go like, oh, that's awesome. That's even better. Let's do that. Let's do that. Go with that. So.
Well, thanks everybody for coming on, and
yeah, thanks for running this, Greg. It's been fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Everybody take care and good luck with stuff.
Yeah,
and I'll be following all you guys and checking all your stuff out, and definitely.
That sounded stalker. Should I hide?
You gotta have a new stop. That's it.
Awesome.
If you guys want to, also we have another podcast that we do on Sundays called Breakfast Talk. If you guys ever wanted to be like a guest, or just suggest a topic of conversation or whatever the case may be, please feel free to do that. And anybody that's watching, please go ahead and check out our Breakfast Talk. We have we're on the 2nd season now, so we have tons of backlog stuff. The first season was definitely more indie advice for creators, so if you want to go and check that out, if you need more advice, we kind of now more into the mainstream stuff. But yeah, Greg and I are on it with Dylan from SeerNova Comics as well. So we have a good time on Sundays, and we joke around a lot and stuff. We have 2 shows, Breakfast Talk and then Brunch Bulletin, which is more of just a catch up on what we're doing and what we're up to and stuff like that, promotions. So if you guys want to check that out too, that's great. But it was great to meet you guys.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care.